I got into accident scene investigation and laws regarding insurance companies, and that's how I got into doing some of the stuff that I did. I realized that it's not all plain sailing when it comes to law, and that there is a lot of fraud involved. So that's where I got involved. I started helping people get out of debt. Um, yeah, I started 16, 17 years ago. A lot has changed. I used to use the Credit Consumer Act 1974, and I know that doesn't work as well in the courts regarding contract law. So yeah, we've had to change our paperwork. We've had to change what we're doing, but it seems to be working. They are the ones that are on the run now, not us. So people need to realise that, like you said, they are not in debt. This is all a made-up, fraudulent system, and we're going to beat them.
We absolutely are, and I think
Yeah.
the easiest thing to say to folks that maybe are getting into this now, broadly, this system operates commerce contract law, which is the at law side of things,
Yeah.
and then there's trust law, which is the highest law of the land, God's law, if you like. So we're going to dig into all of that stuff, folks. But one of the things you were talking about before we kicked off here, Dave, was PCNs. A lot of what you're doing has been working with the PCNs, and I know a lot of the inquiries that we get are around those types of fines. So can you sort of elaborate and explain how it works, how it comes, why is it they don't really have a legal claim, and how is it we can win?
Well, first of all, 90% of the PCNs that are sort of given to people are not done through a court. So the end process, if you ignore these PCNs and what have you, and then all of a sudden you get notices of enforcement through the door, most of these are just from the councils. They're just made up pieces of paper from the council saying you owe us money. So none of it is legal from the start. So
like everything else they do, right?
Like everything else, yeah, the council just make things up as they go along. So these notices of enforcement need to have certain items on them, like the original PCN number, which 99% of these don't have. So what happens is the bailiff company will put their own reference number on them, which makes it completely void from the start, and they can't do anything with them. So the general layman doesn't even know, that these are not enforceable. So they need a week from serving these notices of enforcement to actually coming and sort of clamping vehicles or trying to get in your house or whatever. So there's lots of things that they can and can't do. They only have 12 months to enforce these notices of enforcements, and most of the time they're just illegal. So what I'd expect people to do now, or a good thing for people to do, is to do these DSARs, these data subject access requests, on the actual courts that these are alleged to be in. They're very simple to do. Just write your name and address to the actual court, and give them 2 pieces of evidence of your identity. And they've got to give you this information. And most of the time it comes back blank. They haven't got any information on you. So bang, you've got them. Bang, you've got them.
If somebody's in receipt of a PCN, then now, let's say I got a PCN today,
yeah.
What would you suggest that I would do? How would I play that out?
Well, what I would do is I'd wait for the council to actually get this information from the DVLA, because once the council has got information from the DVLA, they're getting your data. It's been sold to the council, so you've got them straight away on your personal data being sold. That's what I'd do, and then I'd write them a notice to say that they're fraudulent envelopes, which are, if you get an envelope like this with a box in it, it's fraudulent. And most of the time they've got PO box numbers on the back. They're non-landmass addresses. So right away, it's fraudulent under the 2006 Fraud Act.
Can you explain for the layman, just as a quick one, why is that letter with the box? Why is it fraudulent?
The box signifies it's in Admiralty law and maritime law, a box is closed, and anything in it is considered not admissible. So what they're doing is they're trying to hide the fraud in these boxes. So when you get these PCN notices, the whole page will just be covered in boxes with your information inside. So what they're doing is they're concealing the fraud. So straight away, if you remove the boxes off the paper, it doesn't mean anything. It's just babble. It's just rubbish. So you've got them straight away under the UPU, the Universal Postal Union laws of 1929, the Universal Convention. So people need to look into the Universal Postal Union, which is a very powerful organization over all courts, over all governments, and they can't be messed with. I mean, what they're doing is they're putting their own fraudulent stamps on these mails. You know, the what they call the franking machines. So they're not even stamped. They're not properly done under the Universal Postal Union 1929 conventions. It's all fraud. The whole thing's fraud.
You've actually used that four-corner rule in court, haven't you?
Yes, I have used that four-corner rule.
Do you want to share that story? Because it blew me away, actually.
Okay. I was called to court. Do you want me to do the whole story from the beginning?
Yeah, I think may as well, because it's a good story. It just kind of outlines all the corruption and.
Okay. Well, the corruption just goes on and on and on. I was called to a house because this is what I do. I help people that have bailiff issues and this, that, and the other. This one woman, an elderly woman. I'll just call her Alison for Pete's sake. It was about 3:30. We got a phone call to say that a bailiff was in her living room for the last 2 hours, trying to get over £900 out of her to do with council tax. Now, I'd worked with this woman previously, and I knew that there was no such thing as the liability order for council tax for this particular woman. We'd called the courts up and we caught them at it. So I went straight down to her house knowing that there was no liability order and that this bloke who was called a bailiff wasn't there legally or lawfully. So as I walked into the room, he gets on his phone straight away, calling the police, saying, I'm being assaulted. I didn't go up to him or anything. So what I did is I pulled up my ID card and I walked over to him, and I said who I was, and I asked for his ID. He refused. I turned to the people in the room. There was 4 people in the room at the time, and I said, has he given any ID or been asked to leave? And all of them said, yeah, we've asked him for his ID. He's refused. He's refused to give us any warrant, any kind of liability order, any kind of paperwork, and he's trespassing. He shouldn't be here. We've told him to leave. So with that, cut a long story short, he's picking his iPad off the floor and he's picking his camera off the floor, and I've thrown him out the door. Police are called. Within 3 minutes, we've got 3 police officers, 1 outside with him and 2 inside with the 4 people that were inside with me, all witnesses to what just happened. So the police officers just they took all our statements, more or less, very, very, very small statements, asking who we were, where we lived, and this, that, and the other. They actually let this fella back into the house because they'd been sat in or stood in the hallway, gabbling amongst themselves. They let this fella back in the house to do his duty, and I questioned him over it. I said, "Hey, he's been thrown out once. He's causing a breach of the peace." So they've said he's got a legitimate warrant on his iPad, which I said, that's not legitimate. It's not done through any court. And they said, yes, it is. We've seen it and it's legitimate. So we're letting him in the house to carry on.